I'd rather create something that others criticise than create nothing and criticise others.
If you have high quality product behind the bar, it's like a weapon.
It's not about the figures, it's about who those figures are.
The Hospopreneurs Podcast.
I'm going to drink this beer.
Yeah, let's crack them.
With James Henderson.
Hello and welcome to episode 30 of the Hospopreneurs Podcast. Emma and Tom's founder, Tom Griffith, takes us through his story. The story behind building a leading Australian healthy drink and snack business. International corporate advisory, food manufacturing, packaging and processing, brand development, and how a strategic partnership can explode your growth are the sorts of topics we discuss today. Grab your pen, your beer, or other such listening instrument, and welcome to episode 30. Hello, and welcome to the show, Tom.
Thank you for having me.
No worries at all, mate. No worries at all. I like to start the show by asking if you have a crazy hospitality story. That's something funny, exciting, strange that you've seen in the industry.
When I was a young fellow, I used to work for a catering firm called Peter Rowland Catering. So we would do high-end parties. And on one occasion, we were working at Dick Pratt's house, of all things, doing a Sunday lunch. And only 11 of the 12 guests turned up. So between us all, we ate the 12th serving of the cold seafood smorgasbord. Peter Rowland arrived.
Yep.
And Dick Pratt said, "Oh, Peter, we've had one drop out. Why don't you join us?" So the boys have gone to the rubbish bin and constructed a meal from the bin for the boss.
No.
I'm not kidding.
Oh,
yeah.
Gee. So does he still not know that story, or does he know what happened?
No, he doesn't know, and Peter still likes me, so we'll just hope you listen to this. Peter's a good bloke.
I like that. Thanks for that story, Tom. The next thing I like to ask is why you do what you do. So before we get into what you do, I'd like to know what really inspires you.
Why we did it and why we do it are quite different, actually. We did it because Emma and I both wanted to do our own thing. Emma, personally, for her own flexibility, me to have a stab at something. Why Emma and Tom's does it is because we genuinely believe that people are happier when they're healthier. And if you eat well, you stay well. So we help people look after themselves.
Fantastic. So tell us a little bit more then. Let's open up what it is that you do. You mentioned Emma and Tom's, and that's why we're doing the episode today. Can you tell us a bit about Emma and Tom's and the brand?
Yeah, Emma and Tom's, we believe, is a leading Australian healthy drinks and snacks business. So we make whole fruit juices, we make no added sugar, sparkling iced tea, flavoured milk, fruit and nut bars. So all of our products are uniquely all natural. They've got no added sugar and they're minimally processed.
To get into that, do you guys have some sort of experience with health foods? You mentioned there that you were in catering and in hospitality, but did you work with health foods and what really led you to want to be part of that movement?
I did a startup in the UK, and Backer went and lost £1.5 billion of his own personal wealth. So he pulled funding. So I was out of a job, and that sort of sent me back towards Australia. And I was doing a ski season in North America, and I was jumping in the gondola every morning to go to the high alpine, drinking these green drinks, and thought, this is fantastic. No one's doing it in Australia. And yeah, I'd always been health conscious, obviously, and active and everything else, as had Emma. So that was our sort of vision.
You mentioned a startup in the UK. How did you even get into that?
In fact, both Emma and I have done UK startups. Emma's was a construction industry portal, a bit like, if you know, Aconex in Australia. And mine was a cross-channel media and business services play with a whole lot of guys I met from Publicis Advertising, who was a client of mine.
Okay.
I was asked to be a CFO. You know, I was in the UK quite a long time. I had a whole life in the UK for sort of, you know, where I developed a similar business network as you might have in Australia. I was a corporate advisor. I knew dozens of corporate lawyers, and I was doing deals in London and Paris. So I'd become, you know, quite ingrained. It wasn't like I just arrived and I was asked. I'd been around a bit. And I knew a lot of these smart guys in Publicis, and they wanted a CFO.
Yeah, right. Can you tell us a bit about that brand? I'm not too familiar with the brand.
Well, I mean, Publicis is the global French advertising conglomerate, and they've been a client of mine. And these guys had left Publicis, and they started a business called Mongrel Worlds, of all things, and got quite a lot of money, got £15 million, and they wanted to really create media tailored towards certain groups of people. and then channel advertising down towards those groups. So it was group specific. And then if the media and advertising resulted in a sale or a subscription, the business was to get a portion of the lifetime customer value. It never got as far to really fulfill its potential before our backer went and blew up, sadly.
Yes, right. Well, you mentioned there as well. So you mentioned you were a corporate lawyer.
No, a corporate advisor.
A corporate advisor. So before that, or earlier in the episode, you mentioned you worked in catering. Was that while you were studying, or yeah? Obviously, linking it's sort of coming this interesting, almost full circle back to that sort of product, like a hospitality sort of based product. Did you enjoy your time in catering?
Yeah, I loved it. Actually, it gets worse. My first job was working in a fruit shop.
Yes.
And Emma's first job was picking strawberries. So there's the real full circle. No, I really enjoyed catering. It was good fun. I mean, as a student job, but we went to a lot of great parties. I mean, Alan Bond's wedding, and I did Gretel Packer's 21st in Sydney, and we saw some pretty good things.
It sounds like you've had some really interesting stories on top of that, the crazy hospitality story to start with, and maybe we'll get something else coming out in the episode. And I'd love to hear some more if you've got something as it comes up. So then, through your experience overseas, then you obviously wanted to come back to Australia and start Emma and Tom's. How did you guys go about doing that, and how did you meet Emma?
I met Emma when I was 12 years old, having a swimming lesson of all things.
Huh.
And then we sort of lived parallel lives. She was doing an MBA, for example, in INSEAD in France when I was living and working in Paris. Our London startups were basically overlapped. So I knew what she wanted to do. And to start, we actually went to a cafe in Carlton in Melbourne and just talked to the owner as to what sort of produce he wanted to stock in his cafe, what he wanted to sell his customers. And from there, we started making up juice blends in the kitchen, of course. Then we ran around trying to find a place that made bottles. And of course, bottle manufacturers send their bottles to bottling plants. So we sort of found out some possible bottling plants. Then we had to convert our kitchen trials into large commercial quantity batches of juice. We had to find a distributor. And in the end, it was one of my best mates' stepbrother's fiance's stepfathers had just bought one. So we nailed him down. We got a designer who I was referred to, who's a Melbourne guy, who we still use today a lot, James Sagrove. And I was on the phone to a mate in Whistler, and I said, I just can't find a designer. He's gone, Tom, use James Sagrove. And James has apparently been in Whistler about when I had been as well. So we phoned him up, and we still use James for everything today, which is good. So we took a year in the end to get it all set up. And then we launched, and we had 10,000 bottles of juice and no customers, which was challenging.
How did you go about that then? How did you go about getting some more customers?
The distributor had a call centre, an outward bound call centre. We compiled a hit list of retailers we wanted to see ourselves in, and we ran around Melbourne and Sydney doing little presentations to all of those to get it ranged. Of course, we didn't sell everything in the first week, and we had the stockpile. And then we bottled another 10,000 bottles the following week. And we sold a bit more. Then we bottled 10,000 the following week and sold a bit more, but still had a lot of bottles on hand. So we've always tried to turn sort of bad issues into success stories. So we found an event called Around the Bay in a Day, where a lot of cyclists ride their bikes from Melbourne around to the Point Nepean Heads, which is 100 kilometres, and then cross the heads on a car ferry and ride the other 100 kilometres back from the other side to Melbourne. So it's a 200-kilometre ride. And 12,000 cyclists that day got a bottle of Emma and Tom's.
That is awesome.
So, and actually going back and looking at it, we got a lot of emails and things to the info account on the bottle. So it was, that worked.
That's fantastic. How did you go about even exploring the option of sponsoring that event?
It ends up always about just doing a deal, whatever you're doing, really. We've never paid to be involved in events. We refuse to. We use product, and that's worked well for us to date.
Yes. What about a company that provides a service rather than a product? How could they potentially add value? Would it be just providing that service for free?
I did a keynote for Hair Care Australia, of all things, in Queenstown earlier this year, and I was talking about our foundation. And one of the girls approached me afterwards and said, how can we help? What can we do in our salon? And I said, look, for example, you could do one free hairdo a month for someone who couldn't afford one to make them look really well presented for a job interview. And, if it's $100 a haircut and you're doing 12 a year, that's a lot better than doing nothing. I mean, I know it's not for everyone, but I just think if you can, have a cause.
So what do you mean there when you say have a cause?
I mean, we always have tried to sort of help. We've got some local foundations like Second Bite and the Paran Mission we give surplus stock to. We sell a bottled water in a foundation that we set up with the Cotton On Group, and we sell this bottled water called the Unite Project, and the proceeds from that go towards alleviating youth homelessness. So, we're just trying to be, I suppose, if you like, a good corporate citizen and focus on, other things. I mean, making money is important because if you don't do that, you're not in business. But, for example, this year we've become a B Corp. There's only about, less than 2,500 B Corps in the world. It illustrates to others that a B Corp is focusing on what they call the triple bottom line. Of course, financial, but also social and environmental outcomes.
I want to ask you, Tom, how have you been able to establish such a strong brand presence across Australia?
It's purely a result, I believe, of we've taken on our own distribution. We had to, we were forced to years ago. And I've now got we now have 45 vans covering the majority of the consumers in Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria and Western Australia. And those 45 vans are doing laps of the CBD and the cafe belt of all those areas. In the case of Brisbane, we really go from Noosa right down to Byron Bay. We're a part of people's lives, and they see the van, and because of that, we get our drinks and our snacks stocked in lots of really good outlets. So we're present. We're there for you.
So it's about that physical presence that's then built your brand. Is that right?
That's right, because if people feel advertised at, they don't believe it. But if you walk into, say, the Armstrong Street food store in Middle Park in Melbourne, and Nick, the owner, goes, "Look, mate, try one of these fantastic green power drinks with your sandwich," and you try it and you like it, you'll feel that you've discovered it yourself. You haven't been advertised at, you've liked it, and you tell your friends. And that's how we wanted to build the brand. It's time, but if you do it, hopefully it's quite sticky.
Yes. How do you make it sticky? In your words,
you've got to have excellent tasting products. Obviously, whether it's a food or a service, it's got to be fantastic, or people won't repurchase. And we try to be innovative. We try to always innovate and give consumers what they're wanting now.
Because I suppose that the brand can get you far, but it does only get you so far. It might get some new customers, but then to have repeat customers, the product's got to back it up.
That's correct.
Did someone show you how to build a business, or how did you learn how to do business?
You learn by doing, that's for sure, and you make mistakes. I mean, we've made 1,000 mistakes. I know failure is not very popular these days. Everyone's on Facebook saying what a hero they are, but you fail and you learn. I mean, if Emma and I have come into a new sector, a completely new sector, and thought we wouldn't fail, we'd have been kidding ourselves. But you learn. I mean, one of our biggest failures led to us going into our own distribution, which has led to us going into developing sort of 50 new products to put into the vans to sell to the customers that we were getting from the vans. That's driven the business. So I think failure, as long as you learn from it. There was that wonderful quote by J.K. Rowling, and when she said, "Rock bottom became the solid foundation upon which she rebuilt her life."
Mm-hmm. I like that.
We just have got to our nadir and had to, you've got to busy yourself. We've taken a lot of advice recently in the last 10 or so years. Early on, we didn't take advice, not because we were arrogant, we just didn't get around to it. Advice is free. It's free advice from people who know. One person who's been very gracious with her advice has been Carolyn Creswell, who owns Carmen's Muesli. And Carolyn's been great and, once again, really generous with advice. And no one gives you the silver bullet. No one gives you the answer. But you do get little tidbits from people along the way, and it all helps.
Obviously, having such a resource like that would be incredible. How much longer had they been operating before you guys came along?
She's been around almost double our time. So she had made all the mistakes before. Whether you're doing burgers, muesli, fruit juice or sand pits, it's the same issues. Customers, cash flow, quality of product, similar category or group of issues normally. It does become quite a...
It came up in the last episode with Nick Pinn. He was very strong on the fact that he's learned through his failures and his experiences, and it seems to be a common theme among successful entrepreneurs that failure is one of the strongest ways that people learn anything. So it's awesome to hear that from you as well. So
how would you not fail? Think about it. I mean, it's impossible because you aren't going to know anything. I mean, our biggest fear is what we don't know, we don't know. For example, I go to the NAV and they say, well, how can we help? And I will say, well, what products do you have that I mightn't be aware of that will help us? There's an awful lot of technology these days that can help you without costing too much money. Things that help you reconcile bank every day without having to spend hours and hours doing that. There's payroll programs where you can knock out half a day's work a week from someone. We're always trying to sort of lighten loads in the office so people can do more important things and have the more, regular process-oriented stuff taken care of by a program.
Yes, I see. So speaking of technologies and innovations, what innovations have you seen in the industry since you've been working in it?
When we started, when we launched, there was no social. It wasn't the impact of social media, which is huge. If you want to get your photograph online very quickly on Twitter, borrow one of my vans and have a cigarette in it in Chapel Street. Look after yourself. That always works well. That's up in about 1.5 minutes normally from the odd stupid member of staff who does that. We've found that we've gone now totally cloud-based, or vans tracked. We have fleet optimization software to help with logistics. So we utilise a lot of technology for an old economy type business.
So what sort of technology? So you said, did you say GPS? You use all kinds of new technology to track? Is it tracking, logistics? Is that what you guys find the most valuable? Or is it the social media side?
No, I mean everything. The fact that all of our finances are now in the cloud. So our whole team of drivers have mobile invoicing systems acting in real time, cloud-based. So is obviously our ERP system is cloud-based. So we can operate really easily anywhere. All of our technology that we use today would have been far too expensive going back, say, 15 years, or even not available. So the current technology allows us to operate like a large multinational would have years ago.
And what about the innovations that are taking place now?
I mean, obviously, just things like storage has become absurdly cheap, for a start, as has the speed of information flow. And then, of course, people are getting more adventurous. We were the first to launch a green drink going back to 2004. Before that, green drinks would have been in the back of a fridge in a health food shop. We've now got green bar in probably 4,000 outlets. Materials are becoming available. So the types of foods that are available have blown right out. Things like fermenting is big. Seaweeds become extremely popular. So there's a lot of food trends that have allowed us to commercialise what would have been, I suppose, more obscure foods going back 10 years' time now.
What changes do you want to see take place?
I think it's more the consumer evolving. We're seeing a lot of consumer evolving, wanting from us real natural food that's not highly processed with no added sugar. I have 2 young daughters, 8 and 9 years old, and they know how much sugar is in, say, Cocoa Pops, and that's not the start of the day. People are pushing us to innovate, and they embrace it, which is fantastic. So if we do a new thing, they're onto it. They know if it's from Emma & Tom's, it's going to be great, and they buy it. What's
your creative process, and what steps do you take, say, when you want to make a new product?
I mean, it's amazing, but it does take up to a year to make. You always think, how could it take so long? We get inspiration from what we see overseas, what we see people making for themselves in Australia, from things we think of ourselves. I mean, we're launching a range of what we're calling soups, and they're going to be basically lovely blends of vegetable juice that you can drink cold or warm up as a soup. But that takes a long time to work out the recipes, then to commercialise them. Then you've got to be working on the labelling and then finding the ingredients. So it all takes time. And then, of course, packaging innovation, and packaging is super important. So it does take a lot of work to come together. We've got a fantastic new product development manager at work, and she does a great job. And Emma's background is in part of that. She used to work for Uncle Ben's, the Mars business. Emma's very good at innovation. The big multinationals often get their products sold because they buy the space, they have the power and the presence and the cash to get them in. We've got to get sales growth by innovation.
Yes, and with that innovation that takes place, I suppose, early on in the process, with that creative aspect to it. So you said you draw inspiration sometimes from other places of the world and other just all kinds of sources. How do you go about even just coming up with an idea? I mean,
we often get a little idea and then we'll run some focus groups to get some views from consumers about it. We might put a survey on Facebook. It might be totally novel. We might go out to a particular manufacturing plant and they'll say, how about doing X, Y, and Z, and something that they've been working on, but they haven't got a brand to attach it to. Or the co-packers that we use, the contract packers, they'll have some ideas that they think we could commercialise and sell well and in doing so, they obviously do the manufacturing and they sell well.
Is that something that you guys look for as well? Like you're actively looking for other products that maybe other manufacturers are making?
Yeah, we've got a lot of different factories in Australia who we have relationships with, so we, I suppose, can understand what they can do for us, be it milk or Tetra Paks or something that's probiotic techniques you want at your fingertips. We are sort of obviously aware of.
I want to sort of get into my wrap-up questions for the episode for you, Tom. And the first one I want to ask you is what you're learning about or exploring right now.
We're looking into understanding marketing online a lot more. It's an area we've not got involved in. We've just launched a new website and we're about to start trying marketing our ambient snacks online. So we're learning, if we can, a lot about that. I've just been, I suppose, researching areas where we think we can have an impact, and I suppose the biggest bang for our buck. So there's no point producing products that are hardcore, niche, fantastic, but only going to appeal to a very small slice of the population. So we're trying to always understand where the next area of demand is going to be. That's really important to us.
How do you find that?
There's no silver bullet. I mean, you can go to the supermarket and say, well, here's a whole big category of food, and no one's innovated here for 20 years. I mean, look at our milk. Our milk's a good example. We're the only range of no added sugar flavoured milk. There's been no innovation in milk, in flavoured milk, for decades. The traditional big multinational brands are really full of sugar. They've got sort of 9 to 10 grams of sugar per 100 mils. Plain milk's got 5 grams of carbohydrate per 100 mils, being obviously lactose, and our milks have the same, 5 grams. So now adults are realising that milk's the ideal recovery drink from exercise because of its carbohydrate-protein ratio, and if they want to give milk to their, or flavoured milk to their children, they can now give them as much as they like, or as much as they would give normal milk. They can use our milk because there's no added sugar.
That's great.
So that's
to see that, like to see that opportunity. Do you have to have a lot of market knowledge, or is it really just a creative process, having market knowledge, or just being able to identify what products have been stagnant for a while?
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of both. I mean, we've got 45 vans visiting 30-odd customers each every day, so you get a lot of feedback. And then we realise that in more so in the other states, but it's coming to Victoria too, schools have either a star rating or a traffic light rating system for food. So you realise that schools is a pretty big pipeline. There's 9,000 schools in Australia, and soon high sugar products are going to be disallowed from sale. Therein lies an opportunity.
How do you ask for feedback as well? You mentioned you get a lot of feedback. How do you go about getting that feedback from customers?
It comes in. I just had a consumer on Instagram send me a message about a fermented juice, which happens because we don't use preservatives. So we have a thing called the risk of real. And I asked him to either call me or give me his number, and he actually rang just before you dialed me up. So I just sent him a text saying I'll call you back when I'm finished with you. But so it's about communication.
If someone wants to do what you do, what advice do you have for them?
Make sure you want to do it, you really want to do it, because once you start, you can't resign from your own business. You can sell it, but you've got to get to a point where it's saleable. You need to be able to fund it. So you can't sort of half fund it and get halfway and then run out of money. So cash is always of huge importance. It's got to be either new or different. New or better. So a new service or product or a better one.
Okay. What's your biggest challenge at the moment, Tom?
Sales. It's always sales. So we've just launched into China, and that's going well. But I mean, I suppose it's resources to move faster. Once again, we haven't got unlimited resources, but we're owned by myself and Emma predominantly. So if you had a whole lot more cash, you'd move faster.
I see. I suppose there are benefits to being smaller as well, in that you're a bit more nimble and a bit more flexible with some with product development.
That's right. I mean, we can do what other companies either can't do or take a long, long time to roll out. We can sort of launch a product and have it into sort of 2,000 to 4,000 shops in 2 weeks.
I guess it's knowing what your strengths are and playing to those strengths. What are your tools for hospitality success, or what's your number one industry resource been? Probably
our team. Our team's fantastic, and everyone contributes, and everyone's contribution is valued. We behave like people, a group of equals, and everyone has helpful, intelligent feedback. We are so close to our customers. We get a lot of valuable feedback from them.
I find that's a real trend, that it always tends to be about people. it's about either mentors or peers or their team. So that's also interesting to hear from you as well, Tom. Ultimately, where do you want to be, and where do you want to take Emma and Tom's?
We want to be a leading Australian, not Australia's leading, a leading Australian healthy drinks and snacks business. So we see there's a huge scope for that. I mean, people have to eat and drink 3 times a day, and it's legal, so that helps. And we're really enjoying our export to Shanghai. That's going great guns. So we're just trying to, if you like, fully exploit the opportunity that we have.
And the last question I'd like to ask you, Tom, is what's the next step for Tom Griffith?
We need to go to more take-home packs in grocery, is our suspicion. We've come to this point very much as an impulse brand. People buy a single serve and have it with their lunch. And we think we would like to be more involved in the take-home market and more export.
Awesome. I like I always like talking about the plan, the strategy moving forward, even that next step, like you just mentioned there. So we'll wrap it up there for today, Tom, and thank you very much for being on the show.
No, thank you for having me. Thank you. It's been great.
Stay in touch with the show after hours at Hospopreneurs on Twitter, Instagram and Facebook. Do you know a hospopreneur? Shoot us an email, hospopreneurs@gmail.com. Creativity and innovation in hospitality. The Hospopreneurs Podcast with James Henderson.